How big is the Super Bowl? It's early February, and every sports fan knows exactly what that means. It's like Christmas to some people. It gets really everyone excited and in a good mood together, and I bet at least 8 different people you know are throwing a party for it. Of course, I'm talking about President's Day, the day where we honor this nation's leaders. But for real, most of you guys are probably watching this shortly after the conclusion of Super Bowl 57 between the Eagles and the Chiefs. And both these teams, they've been getting ready for this, they've been preparing. I think we should have a pretty good game on our hands. If you are watching this though, like way in the future, you've already seen like the next 3 Super Bowls, well, that doesn't mean anything to me because I'm going to be in the future too. You're not like actually ahead of me, you're just ahead of time. Wait. But it's weird to me, kinda. The Super Bowl gets like this long, drawn-out, super highly anticipated walkout, and then it happens, and it's enormous, but then it's just done. Today, though, I want to focus on that enormousness of the big game. I mean, the Super Bowl is huge. Literally every single person on the planet will be glued to their television watching the Chiefs take on the Eagles this weekend. Except literally anyone in any country that's not America. But if you are from America, America is the whole world anyway. The world revolves around us, so it's like everyone's watching. For serious though, let's look at some numbers. Let's toss around some charts and graphs for fun, and let's compare just how popular the Super Bowl is to other things we know. Let's find out just how big is the Super Bowl. Attendance. In terms of people at the game, the Super Bowl's attendance is pretty insanely consistent for its entire 56-year history. The numbers are so rigid, in fact, that last year's Super Bowl, which was in LA, had less fan attendance than the second Super Bowl ever. But the reason for this isn't that football's declining, even though it is slightly. This deals more with stadium size and how we've just kind of hit the limit on people we want at a sporting event. And it's smart to have a limit. The NBA just recently set their attendance record for the regular season, and it's a really cool thing to see, but some of the views that fans had to pay for that insane attendance game are just absurd. It's better to watch at home on the TV at some point. And those nosebleed seats and overcrowded areas really show why the NFL has no desire for increasing the amount of people that can come to a game. There hasn't even been a top 10 attended Super Bowl since 2014, and if you look at this chart, I mean, these numbers are really spread out. There was never a big push to get more people in the stadium. We can really quickly talk about the biggest Super Bowl ever, in 2011, which of course took place in Texas because, you know, Texas. Texas. This is the only Super Bowl that ever piled over 100,000 people together, but again, you can see it's not really an issue of people wanting to come to the game as much as just the stadium can hold that many more people. The Super Bowl is going to sell out every single year. It's just how much the tickets there are available. We can use this huge attendance number for the Super Bowl, though, to compare the peak of the Super Bowl to other large-scale events. And since the Super Bowl has been so consistent its whole lifespan, I thought it would be smart to also take the average of every Super Bowl attendance. So let's see how these in-person attendance numbers can stack up against other legit main world events. Every sport sort of suffers with the stadium problem the same way as the NFL, though. The biggest basketball game ever just happened to occur when the two teams played in a football stadium, and it still wasn't even close to 100,000 people. Baseball's a little bit closer, but they too max out at 92K. So for American sports, the Super Bowl's first, but it doesn't dominate like you'd think it would, maybe. Soccer's had a few bigger performances with bigger stadiums drawing around 200,000, but it too all comes down to how big they can get. For some modern context, there was actually more people at that biggest Super Bowl ever than there were at the FIFA 2022 Final World Cup match. It's just really a matter of how many people can fit in one area, not a matter of interest. Because we're not trying to argue that the Super Bowl is bigger than the World Cup here. And everything else I continued to read about the Super Bowl compared to like other world things just really shocked me for how small it is. With all the coverage and as just hugely publicized as the Super Bowl is, it brings in so much money, it's so much bigger than any other television event in America. It's just weird that under 100,000 people are ever at the game itself. Like, Rolling Loud, Cardi B will pull 250,000 people, but the biggest event in American sports, there's less than 100K people there. And again, it just boils down to stadium size. People have to work with what you give them. So for Super Bowl attendance, it's not maybe as massive as you would think, but they definitely work well with what they have, as good as they can. Viewership. Now, here in television viewers is where the Super Bowl really starts to dominate. In this category, the Super Bowl has been steadily rising all the way from 25 million viewers to around 115 million today. Without restrictions of stadiums, there's been really no limit on the growth of the Super Bowl. I mean, there's no event in America that really nears the Super Bowl's viewership scale. It gains consistently over 100 million viewers, most of which are in the United States. That means around a third of the entire country watches the Super Bowl, which from a countrywide standpoint is just outlandish. I mean, the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, it gets 5 times more than that, and that's an American classic. The presidential debate of 2016 couldn't even crack 85 million viewers, and that's about who's gonna lead our country. This is a football game. It's truly unbelievable how much bigger the Super Bowl is than everything else in America. Even on television, the final episode of MASH is the biggest TV episode of all time, with 105 million viewers watching it. That's crazy, but there are 8 Super Bowls that have been watched more than that episode of MASH. Like, it's not even fair. But that MASH episode is actually good for the 8th most watched program ever. And then followed by another 21 Super Bowls. But what's interesting, to me at least, is how small the Super Bowl is worldwide. It gets under 50 million viewers from non-Northern American countries, which compared to some other sports is just berserk. I mean, I get that football's just not really a worldwide sport, it's more a one country thing, but it's crazy to look at the numbers that some other sports have put up. I mean, everyone knows that soccer is bigger than football, but there's more than just soccer. The World Cricket Championship gained over 1 billion viewers across the globe, and in America we act like cricket's like baseball's little joke sister. It's so funny how cut off we are from like other countries. I feel like we grew up thinking that our sports were kind of the sports, the main sports, and it's just not even close to true. Americans love football more than most countries love any sport. That is true, but on a worldwide scale, it's not the same. What's been something that I've had my eye closely on, and the media is definitely going to try to hide from you, is that Super Bowl ratings have not been high recently, and in the past few years, the game's not growing at all. I don't know if it's still like COVID bounce back stuff or what, but if it continues, it could be a serious issue. They haven't set a record for viewers since 2015, and last year's Super Bowl between the Bengals and the Rams was the lowest rated game since Super Bowl III. There's definitely some sort of lack of interest or bored feelings going on, and it's something we should all watch pretty closely. Money! So it's all done for a reason, and everything links back to money at the end of the day. All the hype up, action, commercials, people watching, it means billions of dollars are up for the taking during the Super Bowl. And there's plenty of people who are trying to snag that money. These numbers are all estimates because the NFL doesn't really release the exact amounts of anything, but it's estimated that league partnerships alone for the Super Bowl total over $1.8 billion for the NFL. And that's just the start. CBS, Fox, and NBC all pay a collective $3 billion a year to broadcast the game. So they basically switch who gets to broadcast it every year. This year's Fox's turn, and the other two don't get to, but they still all three are paying every year, and the NFL is making $3 billion from it. And the ads at the Super Bowl, which are like most people's main game for watching over football, those $5 million for just 30-second segments. And that adds up to over $500 million for the entire game's commercials. Now, moving on, there's a lot of debate over what the Super Bowl being in your city, what kind of impact that has on a place. Every shop gets to skyrocket prices for a week, and they make a ton of money from it, but also all the Super Bowl kind of hard labor, moving stuff around, all that money is coming from the city. That money comes from local rich sponsors, businesses who want to put their name on the Super Bowl, and mainly taxpayers, which makes a lot of people really unhappy. The final way of cash flow for the Super Bowl is sports betting, which is an up-and-coming, just booming network. The Super Bowl gets bet on like no other sporting event, and I plan to go into that in a future video, but it's estimated that over $16 billion will be placed on the Super Bowl this year, and that's just of kind of regulated, known stuff. That means probably over $20 billion of total gambling. And this is not even near all of it. There's so much more ways of money coming in that we didn't even talk about. But this gives you a pretty good picture. Just amazes me how so much money is riding on just a sporting event. Two teams playing a game against each other. Opportunity. The last thing I wanted to talk about was something that we've kind of gone over in part with all the other ones, but it's opportunity. The Super Bowl presents just insane opportunity. There's chance for infinite people and parties to kind of get a slice of the Super Bowl cake. There's so much leading up to and on the day of the Super Bowl, and with that many eyes on the same place, it creates endless possibility. People can streak and be seen by literally every single person they've ever known, or fans can come together for beautiful messages. The Super Bowl is the pinnacle of not just American sports, but of real-world interaction, people coming together with no hate or animosity for anything real. Countless people let themselves indulge in fanhood for their favorite sports teams and fight over a game involving an egg-shaped ball. But it's all in great spirit. One other kind of weird moment that I always love how they take advantage of at the Super Bowl is the show that plays directly after the game. The amount of people that are just going to leave their TV on after the Super Bowl and let that show play in parties or any social situation in the background, it's crazy. It's kind of a weird one because people might not be paying super close attention to your show, but it's going to get the view numbers of a top show ever. Family Guy was actually first seen after Super Bowl 33, directly premiering after the game, and it went on to run for over 20 years and counting. And Fox was able to premiere Family Guy that year because they had the rights to the Super Bowl. It's just all the opportunity that the Super Bowl gives. And I haven't even talked about the opportunities presented before the game even kicks off. Guys get paid millions of dollars to discuss and analyze the game, and there's an ungodly amount of media coverage that goes into it pre-game. It's impossible to know just how much coverage it actually gets or like statisticize how much money the Super Bowl's making because it's just so big. I mean, it would practically be responsible for like half of ESPN's income the past few weeks, just hyping it up. People are so excited for the game. Sports interest in general just skyrocket the week of the Super Bowl because everyone's feeling so sporty. The Super Bowl is just immeasurable how big it is, but it's as big as anything you could possibly imagine. Outro. And that's all I got today. This is definitely a different style video for me, a little more quick fire, just a shorter one, but it really interested me and it was a topic I thought would interest some of you guys, so I decided we'd learn about it. It's pretty cool to see how much the Super Bowl dominates like all other forms of media in America, but it's also humbling to know that outside of our country, no one really cares, and we're pretty small. I hope you guys enjoyed my deep dive into the popularity of the Super Bowl. Check out my channel for some other pretty cool sports videos. And have a great day. Bye. Also, comment down below what happened in the Super Bowl. I'm not going to watch, I'm just going to read comments, so be as accurate as you'd like.